Yes, sir. Monday, motion Monday, muscle Monday. Just got done on the yard. Heavy Chevy on the chest, arm workout, man. We stand on the grind, stand hustling. Y'all know how we do, man. We gonna keep dropping these correctional officer videos too, man. I'm getting a lot of love, a lot of support, man. I got people telling me I should be a recruiter, man, for corrections, bro. I appreciate all the flowers, all the support. It means a lot to me. I'm glad that these videos are making an impact and they're really helping people out in their process, in their journey to becoming a correctional officer. That's why I do it, man. I want to see as many people get hired on as quickly and efficiently as possible. If you find in my channel or this your first video you catching of me, I've been working in corrections 14 years now. 3 different facilities. I work 1 county jail. I've been 2 different federal prisons, man. It's been good to me. You know, I still love the job, man. It's been a blessing for me. One of the best things that ever happened in my life, bro, was, you know, me finding corrections, applying for the job and taking that leap of faith. You know, I didn't know I had to find my way like a lot of y'all are going to have to find y'all's way, you know. But I'm going to keep dropping these videos. I'm going to give y'all some more game in this video, you know, some of the best advice I can give you, you know, if you're going through the hiring process. You know, the first one right here is don't let anyone talk you out of applying for the job. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, you know, you talk to the wrong people or, you know, you get other people's opinions. They may try to discourage you from applying to the job. They may try to point out all the potential dangers. Some people say that it's a dead end job. You know, some of y'all may have been talking to people that work in other agencies, people that might be police officers, firefighters, stuff like that. And some of them may have been telling you that corrections is the bottom of the barrel as far as law enforcement. Don't do it. It's a trap. It's a dead end career, stuff like that. Don't listen to none of that. If you got your mind set on this career, man, you want to make that jump, do it. Apply, bro. Don't listen to them. You know, take everybody's advice for what it is, bro, but you got to make the best possible decision for you. And I always say it's not for everybody. You know what I'm saying? People that's saying that corrections is bottom of the barrel, you know, I want to see them come inside and work. You know, I done seen police officers that came in and worked as a CO and it wasn't for them. It wasn't for them. They had to go back to the streets, you know, because one thing about working in corrections, right, you don't got no gun on you, you know, and you always outnumbered at all times. You know, it ain't about pulling a gun on you and tasers and all that. A lot of times you working in these institutions, you know, these facilities, it's going to be you by yourself, you know, and probably 100+ inmates on your unit. The unit I work now, you know, today we got 112 inmates on the unit. It's just me. You know, it's a unit upstairs. They got like 114 inmates and it's another officer. Only thing we carry is pepper spray, handcuffs, our walkie-talkie. What else we got on us? And that's it. That's it, bro. You got your keys. That's it, bro. You know, you outnumbered at all times. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, I just try to prepare y'all for what to expect. I try to give y'all an honest, you know, review of the job, you know, what it entails, what it takes to be a good correctional officer, and you got to make the best possible decision for you at the end of the day. This is the next thing right here. You know, when you're trying to decide what facilities to apply to in your area, maybe you in a situation where you got multiple facilities in your area. You know, you may have a prison that's a long distance away. Maybe it's 45 minutes, an hour away. I get a lot of y'all asking me questions. Do I think it's worth, you know, applying to that facility if it's that long of a drive away? You know, honestly, man, sometimes at the end of the day, you just got to get on with the first opportunity that presents itself to you. You got to jump on it. You know, in my situation, right, you know, when I got on with the feds, right, my first institution, it was 1 hour and 10 minutes away from my apartment, you know. So I had to take that opportunity, though. They were hiring people fast. I was trying to get my foot in the door. I had been at the county jail like 1.5 years, and I was trying to move up and advance my career, you know. So I applied, you know, I did that whole commuting, you know, riding in the van pools for like 1.5 years. Then I transferred again, you know, when I came down here to where I'm at now, you know, I knew I wanted to buy a house. I had been stacking my money that whole time I was at my last prison, you know, got my transfer approved to come down here. I bought my crib. Now I'm like 10 minutes away from the facility. So like I said, sometimes you just got to jump on the first opportunity that presents itself. And you don't got to stay there the whole time. You know, maybe you get on at a prison or jail and it's 1 hour commute from where you live at now. You know, you can either move closer or it may be another prison that you want to get on that's, closer to where you live at. They might not be hiring at the time. But this is one thing about every facility, corrections, nationwide, worldwide, they going to be hiring at some point. At some point, they're going to be hiring. You just got to keep your application in. You got to keep tabs on it. Call HR, email them every so often and inquire about your application status and stay on it. This is the next thing, right? Be honest with yourself and make sure you got the right mentality and the right skill set for the job. Being a correctional officer, it takes a special person to go in there every day. You subjecting yourself to being around potentially violent, dangerous people. It's a lot of communicable, however you pronounce it, diseases that's inside these facilities. You got unpredictable inmates, mental health inmates. Anything can pop off at any moment. Working around inmates, you got to have good communication and interpersonal skills. You can't just rely on brute strength. You can't rely on, body slamming the inmates every time you get into a verbal altercation. You got to have good communication skills and de-escalation skills. That's what the name of the game is when you work in corrections, so you got to be honest. Am I able to go in there and, keep the peace, without having to use violence, resorting to violence, or trying to put my hands on the inmates? Can I go in there and an inmate cuss me out, call me all types of things outside my name and still, keep my composure, keep my demeanor, still do my job? Those are the type of things you need to be thinking about. Do I got the maturity level to become a correctional officer? I seen officers that came in over the years, they weren't mature enough for the job, bro. I seen a lot of crazy stuff, and I just sit and I look like, what are they doing, bro? You got officers in there high-fiving the inmates. I remember one time I was working at the county jail, young dude, he couldn't have been but like 18 or 19 years old, CO. He is in there wrestling with the inmates. I'm like, bro, we work in a prison, bro. This ain't high school. This ain't wrestling club, WWF. This is real life shit, bro. What if that situation would have took a turn for the worse? The inmate, they might have been trying to lure that officer in. They wrestling, thinking it's all a game. Next thing you know, his homeboys jump on that officer. You never know. You got to always think like that, bro. It's not a game. Take it serious. Make sure you got the right mindset and the right mentality going into it. This is the next thing. Make sure you're cool with everything that involves becoming a CEO. I try to be honest and upfront with y'all, right? So, working as a correction officer, you're going to be subjected to working the weekends, working the holidays. You're not going to have a traditional 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, weekends, holidays off schedule anymore. 9 times out of 10, depending on the facility that you're at. Y'all might be on 12-hour shifts. Y'all rotate and you got every other weekend off. Where I'm at right now, you do 5 days on, you got 2 days off, and everything's based off seniority. So, if you are at the bottom coming in, you a rookie, you're not going to get no weekends probably. You're not going to hardly get no holidays in the beginning, but you can work your way up. You're probably going to start off maybe on second shift, 4 p.m. to midnight with Mondays, Tuesdays on. It's part of the game. I had to go through the same process. These days I'm able to get the weekends off consistently, but I got 12 years in. You just got to stay in, pay your dues, and work your way up slowly but surely. You know what I'm saying? And there's promotional opportunities too. Just because you start off as a correctional officer doesn't mean that you have to end your whole career as a correctional officer. There's so many different jobs outside of custody. You got all these different agencies out here. I've seen a lot of y'all asking me, if, working as a correctional officer, right? Can I become a police officer later? Will that prepare me to become a police officer? Some of y'all got aspirations to go on to bigger and better things. I get it, bro. I want to see you win and be successful. I honestly think that working in corrections could be one of the best things that you could do, as far as promoting and, advancing your career in law enforcement, because it's going to teach you patience. It's going to teach you communication skills, especially when you get out there on the street. You know what I'm saying? You might have a potentially hostile person and subject you're dealing with. You've been working in corrections for a couple of years. You can de-escalate the situation. That's one thing that corrections, man, is going to prepare you for if you got bigger aspirations. And I've seen plenty of people come in to corrections, right? And they go and they move on to other things. You got Border Patrol. You got ATF, DEA, FBI, probation, court service. services, you know, police officers, FBI. So many people have gone on to other things, bro. And I love to see it, bro. That's what one of the great things about this career is, bro. You could use it as a stepping stone to get into other types of agencies. There's so many different agencies, bro. So don't ever limit yourself if you got bigger aspirations, bro. Keep promoting, keep pursuing. This is the next thing right here. You know, when it comes to the hiring process, a lot of y'all give me questions about how long should I wait before I call back, or when should I expect to call back. The best advice I can tell you is to stay active with human resources, bro. When I was going through the hiring process, I was just as eager as y'all. I was hungry. I'm like, man, are these people ever going to call me back? I want this job, bro. You know, so I would, every other weekend, I probably was emailing them, calling them. I was the type, I'll drive up to the prison and drop my resume off, you know, in the parking lot. If I could catch HR, if I seen somebody out, maybe they was in uniform, I would ask them about the job, you know, how long should I wait? I was the same way, bro, because I wanted that job. You got to have that same tenacity. You got to have that same eagerness to, you know, show them that you really want it. You really want them, bro. By the end of the, you know, the process of you getting hired and they finally call you with your start date, they should know your first and last name, bro. They should know your first and last name. You've been on it that much. Like I said, I'll call them. It wasn't, no, if I couldn't get nobody on the phone and it was my day off, maybe I call every other hour. You know, I start off, maybe HR get in around 8:30. I give them a little time, drink their coffee, get settled in. I call them at 9 a.m. If I can't get in touch with nobody, I'm calling again at 10. I'm calling again at 11. I'm calling again at 12. You know, I might even go wait at the prison in the parking lot, you know, walk up on them, make sure, you know, let them know I ain't hostile or nothing, doing nothing crazy. Hey, I want this job. I apply. I put my application in. Here's my resume. Can you help me out, bro? You got to show them that you hungry. This is the next thing right here. When it comes to the test in the academy, you know, a lot of y'all ask me questions about what's the correctional academy like. What's the hiring interview test like? You know, when it comes to the test, right, a lot of the questions are going to be testing your mentality. Do you have the mental makeup to be a correctional officer? They're going to be a lot of situational questions. They want to see how you're going to respond and, you know, what you're going to do in these different scenarios. You know, stuff like if an inmate was to grab the warden, put a shank to his neck and demand that he open the gate, or maybe you working up in the tower, you control the gate for people to get out. You know, are you going to open the gate, or are you going to tell the inmate no? You know, the warden loses his identity, his professional identity in the event of a hostage situation. Stuff like that. They just want to see how you react, how you think on your feet. You know, make sure you got the right mindset in order for you to be a correctional officer, and should they bring you in to their facility. You know, as far as the academy, the best advice I can give you is to just prepare. Preparation is key, you know, especially when you're coming into corrections, right? So, you know, when you get hired, most of the time you work on the floor. You work as an officer at the prison or jail, wherever you're going to be at for a few months. And then they send you to the academy. They want you to invest a little bit. Make sure they don't just send you to the academy right away, and then you end up quitting like a month or two later when you get back from the academy, because it costs a lot of money, you know, to send us to the academy, send us through all this training. So, you know, they got to protect their investment, and I get it. So, you know, you got to go to the academy in, let's say, 5 to 6 months, you know, and you know, you worried, you curious about the running part, you nervous. Start preparing today. You can ask your shift supervisor, other officers, human resources, what do we got to do at the academy? How many miles do we have to run? How many do I got to do push-up tests? Do I have to do a dummy drag for a certain amount of time? And now you know, so you can start preparing. You can start going to the park or the track, running around the track, timing yourself. You can start doing the push-ups right now. So that way, when you get down there to the academy, you are already you're in good standing. You already know you're going to pass it because you've been training for it for months, bro. You know, and as far as the tests go, you probably going to have a weekly test on the history of corrections, the policy and the procedures of the agency that you work for. So a lot of times the instructors, right, in the classroom setting, they're going to be going over the stuff in the manual, the book, whatever y'all studying from. And they'll probably say stuff like, you might want to know this for the test. The test probably academy going to be like every Friday. You know, that's how it was for the 2 academies I went through, and you just study the night before, highlight it. It's just like high school or college when you got a test, bro. It's nothing hard about the academy, bro. As long as you study for the test and you go down there, you already prepared for the physical part, the running part, you're going to be good, bro. And don't go down there thinking it's spring break, girls going wild. I seen people get fired from their job because they thought the academy was a vacation, bro. They didn't take it serious. They went down there and did something stupid. They got sent back to their facility, and the warden ended up firing them, bro. All kind of idiotic stuff. This is a business meeting, bro. You got to treat it like it's business. You down there for a job. You not down there on vacation, bro. Take it serious. I seen people get fired. They got drunk and running around on campus butt naked in their underwear, doing just doing idiotic, goofy stuff. Now they out of a job. All that time and effort they put in to getting hired, down the drain. Flushed it down the drain. You know what I'm saying? This is the next thing, right? You got to explain to your loved ones, you know, you married, you got kids, stuff like that. If you're going to do this job, you need to sit them down and you really need to explain to them what you are about to undertake. You got to be like, hey, you know, dad or mom or, you know, hubby, wife, I'm not going to always be available, you know, or able to, you know, do all the holiday traditions that we used to do, you know, doing this new career. But I'm doing it because I love y'all. I want to build a better future for us. You know what I'm saying? That's the best way to do, man, because you know, your husband, your wife, your kids, they might not understand why dad got to go to work at midnight, or, you know, wifey, she sleep during the daytime while you at work. Then when she home, you know, you at work, stuff like that, bro. You got to explain it from the get-go. You know, it might be troubling times. Sometimes it gets hard, bro, you know, but like I said, if you can make it work, and you can explain the situation to them, bro. And, you know, sometimes you might not, like I said, you might not have the weekends off. You know, if you off Monday, Tuesday, family night might have to be on Monday, Tuesday. If y'all's tradition was y'all going out every weekend doing something fun, now you off Monday, Tuesday. You just got to make it work to the best of your ability. But there's plenty people that do it, bro. I got plenty people at my job that work, you know, husband and wife, they work together. You know what I'm saying? They work at the same prison. They make it work, so you can make it work too. This is the last thing I'm going to leave y'all with, bro. You know, if you come to find out that the job is not for you, you know, you've been working on the job maybe 6 months to a year and it's just not for you, it's not the end of the world. You know what I'm saying? It's not for everybody. You know, you go in there, you've been working like, this ain't really what I thought it was going to be. You know, there's other opportunities out there. You know, before you just, you know, resign or quit, maybe see if you could transfer to a different department in the prison. You know, maybe hold on to your job for a little bit longer and start looking for employment at other agencies if you still want to stay in law enforcement. You know, me personally, I never would just quit a job, up and quit a job, you know, without having something else lined up, unless I was just absolutely miserable. I absolutely hated it. You know, it's going to be troubling times. You're going to have difficult co-workers. You're going to have inmates that are butt heads that you got to deal with, you know, but if you can get past all of that, bro, the job is not hard. It's nothing hard about working in corrections. Most days I go in there, bro, it's a smooth shift. Everything's pretty routine. 99% of corrections, it's the same thing every day. You just got that 1%. When shit hits the fan, you might have an inmate fight, inmate OD, you know, inmate trying to commit suicide, and staff needs assistance. You know, you address it and we move forward. We move forward after that, bro. And we right back to, you know, to routine standard procedure, bro. Y'all got any input, thoughts, comments on this video? Make sure y'all drop them comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you like this video. Check out my website. I got merchandise for sale. Tap in with me on my website, bro. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok. Like I said, y'all got any input, thoughts, comments, hit that like and subscribe button. I'm going to be sure to get back with you as soon as I can. Y'all know how we coming. Let's get motivated.